Welcome to Classical Chats. I'm Tiffany. Today we have a horn player, and I'm very excited to have a horn player for the first time on Classical Chats, but also to have a conversation with a horn player for the first time personally. I don't know much about the horn, so I'm very excited to talk to Tyler, get to know him, and about his journey with horn. Hey,
How's it going?
how are you?
Good.
Um, I might need to put in headphones because of course, at this hour that I'm supposed to film, there is a huge construction noise in the background.
Oh, I totally get it. I live in an apartment too.
Yeah, where
Yeah.
are you?
Yeah. I'm in Columbus, Georgia.
Ah, I've never been to Georgia.
It's a really peaceful place. It's a really nice
Yeah.
for the gig scene, especially like around the Alabama, like Georgia area. So it's like right in between. So they pay
Mm,
pretty good.
that's good. I like your setup with the mic, and I think I read in the notes that you're an audio engineer also, aside from
Yes.
being a horn player. So we'll
Yeah.
definitely get into that. Yeah, so you're completely random. And it's been wonderful also to randomly grab guests from the internet, from
Yes.
Instagram.
Of course.
I just thought, you're interesting. I've never actually talked to a horn player. To my recollection of being in music for 20 years, almost 19 years, I don't think I've actually had a conversation with a horn player.
Well, let's do
And
this
I
now.
saw that. I know maybe that just shows my pathetic life, confessing my pathetic life. But I also saw that on Instagram. You're very active and showing your practicing and your progress. So I thought maybe you would be the perfect introduction to horns for me and also perhaps for my audience. I'm sure my audience knows a lot more about horns probably than I do because I always feel like as a pianist, all I know are those keys or is those keys. So anyway, hi.
Definitely. Hello.
How did you start your journey with classical music? This is my first question for every single guest.
All right, so I was about 11 years old. Kind of pretty standard story, actually. When I was 8 years old, I went to hear the Atlanta Symphony concert live, and they were playing
Mm,
like a simple pops concert with Indiana Jones and Star Wars and all those, and I thought it was super cool. That was my first time listening to live music, like symphony music, and that was inspiring for
mm,
me. So I, of course, chose the horn because I thought, hey, Star Wars has a lot of horns in their soundtrack. That's what my dad used to play. My grandma played it professionally, so I
ah,
was like, I've got to go for it. So I was put on trumpet for like the first 2 weeks of middle school. Then I stuck with trumpet or for horn for the rest of the time. So
hmm.
it's been my long stay.
What made you switch from trumpet to horn?
Well, I guess my band teacher thought I had the ear for French horn because I did have perfect pitch. He discovered, so I was like, okay, that works.
Ah,
That works.
interesting. Yeah, I think from my very limited knowledge, I think it's very hard to produce a sustained note in a French horn, right? It's
Yes,
very,
yes.
very easy to go out of tune and waver.
Definitely. It's also really easy to split notes as well because a lot of horn fundamentals comes from your breathing and your lips vibrating. And your lips
Right.
are like muscles. You got to train them like an Olympic athlete. You can't overstress your muscles or you can get focal
Mm.
dystonia or other performance injuries. Um,
So how
yeah,
long can you practice? Not even how long do you practice, but how long can you practice because of that straining in your, I don't know,
right.
your vocal cords or
Oh,
your breathing
it's
system? I
mostly
don't know.
it's mostly your lips. Your lips
Yeah.
get the most fatigued out of all of it.
Mm.
But it depends on what tension you're holding in your body typically, because you can have some kind of chest tension if you feel like, or shoulder tension if you feel like your breathing is really light and heavy. Or there's even throat
Mm.
tension where you can like close off your throat and not really get a sufficient amount of breath. So
Hmm.
basically, when it comes down to it, when it comes to playing horn, you really have to focus on your consistency of air, like your air speed, and and it's really easy to crack notes because of the partial series. The harmonic series is really close together, especially the higher up you get. You can pretty much play scales using only like your fingers and your lips, and like you don't really have to press anything down, and you can play an entire scale basically.
Mm.
It's really cool.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't know anything about horns aside from the fact that yes, there are not that many keys.
Yeah, yeah,
And I've also heard even professional level horn players have a hard time not cracking sometimes. I can
Oh
hear.
yeah. Oh yeah. It's a high pressure instrument, especially getting notes to like attack initially, because your tongue does a lot of things. We have to think a little bit like a vocalist actually when we're playing. We use syllables
Hmm.
when we're vibrating higher, like we use the E syllable, and then when they're doing like lower notes, like we use like more of an O shape. Like so, it's a lot of vowel shapes. But we don't do a lot of
Hmm.
movement here, so it's a lot of things to think about at the same time.
Yeah, that already is giving me a lot to imagine because I can't actually imagine what it's like in the very beginning when you learn horn.
Definitely. It's a lot of trial and error at the beginning. Um,
Yeah,
it's
it
it's
must
hard to
not
get a
sound
good
very
sound.
pretty.
No, no, it sounds like a bunch of dying ducks, I'll be honest.
All right, so violins is like dying chickens, and ducks is dying ducks is horns.
Pretty much,
Got it.
pretty much. Um, but usually when it comes to beginner horn players, a lot of their problems is too harsh of a tongue. Um,
What
because
does that mean?
so basically their tongue is like tuh instead of
Uh,
da. Like there's lots of
uh,
different syllables you can use with your tongue as well. So when it comes to articulation, typically a lot of people like to use really light things. So your tongue basically meets the roof of your mouth where your teeth meet your roof of your mouth, and it's just like a
mhm,
very light release, and your airflow is always staying consistent. Like you don't stop your air in between each articulation. Like it's a continuous stream. And that's something
mm,
that a lot of younger players don't really get because they stop their air. They go ta, and it's like a dead release. So you have to pay attention to the
mm,
decay of your notes and a whole bunch of other things.
mm. Well, it sounds like you have gathered quite an extensive knowledge of the intricacies of making a beautiful sound in a horn.
Yeah.
So, at what point did it transition from just doing it in school and the Star Wars inspiration into doing it professionally?
So basically, well, professors from my school actually, we have like what's called district honor band. So like every district in Georgia has like their own kind of honor band thing. And the professor of Columbus State University, his conductor, his name is Dr. Nix, Jamie Nix, and he came down and conducted us playing a couple pieces, and he was really awesome to work with. And I had done all state auditions in the past, and I had made like second chair because I studied with a guy from Berlin, Phil. He
Oh,
really,
wow.
really helped skyrocket my playing. He's a substitute horn, goes in regularly. Um, but yeah,
That's
so
amazing.
he was really what jump started my whole thing because um, he like I only studied for like a year and a half with him, and then I was off to college. So in
Mm.
that time, he really helped shape my phrasing ideas, and I got a little bit of a European horn influence in my sound currently still. Um,
What
so
does that mean? A European influence?
so basically, I feel like European players specifically have like a really bright and soloistic kind of characteristic to their sound, whereas American
Oh,
horn players typically have a more collective like section sound. It's totally different.
wait, that almost describes the difference between American pianos and German pianos. I'm mainly talking about Steinway, but also just in general, it's a very clear, crystalline sound for German
Definitely.
pianos in general. But that's interesting that that translates into other instruments as well, or in style of playing at least.
Right, right. And I feel like German horn players, specifically my teacher before, had very crisp, like short articulations when he was doing staccato, whereas American horn players think more legato, almost like depending
Hmm.
on what the context of the piece is. Like if you're going for like tongue, what's it's called tongue stopping, in between staccato notes. So like it could be da, 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 and a lot of American players don't have the same like type of lightness that European horn players tend to have, which I think is really
Hmm.
interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah. So, what are your goals now? So you've had this amazing jump in your playing, and how old are you? You're in school, right?
But yeah, I'm about 21. I'm studying in the Schrobe School of Music. Yeah,
So how's that going?
it's going great. The speaking of which, the piano professor, his name is Henry Kramer. You might have heard the name before. Um,
Yes,
I
he
think
played with Matt.
yes, he's the professor over here. He's really awesome.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, we got a lot of awesome players. Like Wendy Warner, the cello player, she regularly is here. I mean, there's a lot of guest musicians that come in and out. But my goals at this point are to win an orchestral job at this point.
Mm,
I'm taking some substitute spot auditions coming up soon because there's some orchestras finally opening up down here. So
mm.
those are my goals at the moment.
So you're trying to go for an American orchestra or European?
American for now, and
Mm,
then potentially maybe a European orchestra. I'm trying to figure out which one would fit best.
hmm. What are some stories if you have of auditioning for orchestras? I don't have that experience. I just know that usually you go in and play some excerpts.
Yeah, so usually, well, yeah, it's pretty simple. You go and play excerpts. They're very, very strict about rhythm and time,
Mm,
and good sound, of course. But most of all, if you're not playing in time, if you miss like let's say a quarter rest or something like that, you can be cut immediately. So being as consistent as you can uh, is
mm,
an important thing because there's different rounds to it. There's the preliminary round, which basically is where everybody goes, and then they weed out a couple of players that may have some time issues, or maybe it's not the sound that they're looking for. And then you get to the semifinal round, where that's where they decide, okay, these are the players that can play consistently. And then when you get to the final round, is really where, okay, who's the most flexible in terms of musicality,
mm.
and who can do all the things. So they might ask you to play an excerpt again, and play it at a totally different tempo. So you gotta come in really, really prepared for that kind of
Oh
thing.
wow. That's really fascinating because I don't know if you picked this up from specific auditions you've had or if this is really the structure for orchestral auditions, at least for horns, because when I did auditions and competitions for piano, it's never these specific qualities that they're looking for, but it seems so well structured for horn auditions.
Definitely, definitely. They do choose a lot of tricky excerpts. Like for example,
Yeah, what are some excerpts? I don't know. I mean, I of course recognize the horn when it's present in an orchestral piece, but what are
yeah,
some classic excerpts that you always have to play?
Shostakovich Symphony Number 5, the low horn 2D section, the boom, 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 like that one is asked on pretty much every audition these days,
Mm,
because low horn playing is a totally different beast from playing in the mid register of the horn, because a lot of low horn specialists have to be able to keep not only a consistent tone, but like consistent intonation between different intervals in Shostakovich 5, because there are a bunch of different leaps and things,
mhm.
like some tritone leaps here and there. And so keeping like consistent time in your head, like dun 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 dun, is what the strings are doing at that time. So you have to keep that in your head, and you have to basically like hear the orchestra while you're playing the excerpt. It's a totally different beast. And if
Do you
you're
practice with orchestra recording then?
well, most of the time I do metronome practice because I want to have like
Mm.
a goal of, okay, I need to play it at this tempo and I have this much leeway. Um,
Yeah.
and keeping that consistent bum 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 bum. Like I always listen to reference recordings, but it's best to practice it with a metronome. That way you're as consistent as you can be.
Mm, that's interesting. I just practiced a little bit with the metronome. I was preparing for Brahms Piano Concerto, and I
Ooh,
knew that I need to be a bit more in time with my playing because I can't just go all over the place when I'm playing with an orchestra. So
right.
I wanted to improve that specifically with that purpose. So Shostakovich. What else?
Oh, another one is Brahms too.
Mm,
It's like a very
yeah.
popular horn solo.
Yes.
You hear that one a
So
lot.
beautiful.
Definitely. Tchaikovsky Symphony Number 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's another one that's pretty popular. There's also Ravel's Pavane for a Dead Princess. The um
Mm,
That's the main melody there.
yeah.
Um, Let me think of other ones. There's a ton of them. There's also Till Eulenspiegel. It's just consistency. It's a hard one.
Mm,
And
yeah.
then there's another one like the Merry Pranks. Yeah, that one's a fun one. And then
I
there's
admire your
also
ability to sing all of the tones, and now it makes sense. Do you have perfect pitch? Of course you do.
yes. Yeah, and then there's also another one. Der Rosenkavalier is one of my favorite excerpts by
Mm,
Strauss. But yeah, those are the most standard ones I've seen on list.
that made me nostalgic thinking of Rosenkavalier because that was one of the last operas I saw at the
Really?
Met.
Oh, that's
Mm.
amazing. Oh, I would kill to see that performance.
Yeah, I think I did see it. I've lost count of what I have done before the pandemic in terms of going to which concerts and which operas. But yeah, I remember that was a really beautiful music.
Definitely, definitely.
So you're also at complete no transition whatsoever. You can tell from my style. I just go. So,
Me too.
at what point did you decide to start posting stuff on the internet? Because you are a YouTuber
Yes.
and you also post on Instagram. When, why, how?
Well, I had been posting on YouTube since I was like 13 years old, just like messing around back in the
Oh,
day. Like I'll play video games every once in a while, like make little tiny animations and things just for fun.
mhm,
Um, but when I started picking up horn, I was like, this is a lot of fun. So when I was like 15 or so, I got into like learning about what's called digital audio workstations. So something like Pro Tools or FL Studio or Ableton Live or Logic, those are all like programs you use to record music, or Audacity even. And so
yeah.
I got an interest in it, and I was like, this is a lot of fun. I'd like to get into multi-tracking. So when I was about 16 years old, I started just kind of making electroacoustic kind of things, and I really loved it a lot. So it's definitely something I've kept up.
Huh. I would love to hear some snippets if you have any for us.
Yeah, I could definitely send some for you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be cool to feature in this episode because that's to me that sounds like somewhere between a DJ and a I don't know electronics.
kind of,
That's
kind of.
like my idea. That's as far as I know about mixing stuff and what is it called? Digital
Digital audio
audio
workstation.
workstation. That
Yes.
sounds like a very professional term that I don't know.
It's not too much rocket science. Like once you start understanding what's called signal flow, which is like you understand the flow of connection between like the microphone, the cable, the
Mhm.
interface or whatever, like it's a lot simpler.
I have a friend who does electronics, so I'm sure that they'll know all about this. But I just see a bunch of cables and then a bunch of knobs that you turn up and down, and
Yep.
that's as
I
far as I
mean,
know.
that's pretty much what you do. You just turn around knobs and figure out what works best.
You integrate the horn with that type
Definitely.
of electronic stuff?
It's really
Yeah?
cool. Yeah, you can create some really cool textures. Like I have a synthesizer right here. Actually, I don't know if I can get it all the way on camera, but
Ah,
it's really
nice.
cool. It has a lot of parameters on it. Like you can change the attack, decay, sustain, and release of a note. They have all
Right.
kinds of filters. So like you can figure out like which harmonics are in a particular amount of frequencies. So you can like turn it down and like it'll roll off certain frequencies. It's really cool.
So do you make your own compositions?
Yes, for the most
Ah,
part. I whenever I'm making compositions, I actually sit down and just record them. Not the typical like, oh, I'm gonna put this in finale and hope it turns out the best. I actually just sit down, record things, improvise it, and it turns out how it turns out.
that sounds like
Sometimes
a really fun creative project.
definitely. Sometimes it's a lot of minimalism, but I like that. But every once in a while, I'll find a form, and I'm like, okay, I can modulate to this key or whatever.
That's really cool. Do you see yourself integrating that into your professional career
Oh,
someday?
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
I'd love to keep up making videos and I also make covers of pop songs every once in a while, just for the general audience. So I have a mixture of content.
That's cool. Everyone is always very interested in pop and the crossovers, so I'm sure they would love your content.
Definitely, I love crossing the bridge between classical music and regular music that people listen to, because I think that's really important in today's society. Like trying to marry the concept of okay, what can orchestras do to keep the industry alive and keep people coming back into concert halls or even going outside of the concert hall.
Hmm.
Could be a really healthy thing for the industry.
Yeah, speaking of which, I'm asking this just on the spot, and this is something that I've been doing for a lot of guests this year, is to ask them to pick a few pieces that they would recommend for the audience who might not otherwise pay attention to horn music as its own genre or as its own, other than just having it be one of the sounds of an orchestra. So,
Right.
are there a few compositions that you would recommend or recordings that you would recommend that you can
Oof.
think just on the spot? Feel free to take your time. I know
Yeah.
this is very much on the spot, like a test, but
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, if you want a piece that features a lot of horn, there's a really cool brass piece that's called Fanfare Liturgique by Henry Tomasi, and it's
I think I've
really really
heard of that
cool.
piece before.
It's like a French impressionistic piece, and it's super awesome. Like horns have a lot of material. We played it recently. I could send over the recording that my school did as well, if you'd like to use
Yeah.
that. Um, Also, Der Rosenkavalier has a ton of horn parts, a ton of beautiful soaring horn lines. But if you want like a horn solo specific piece, there's one that I played on my recital that I really enjoyed. It's called Sonitine by Bertold Hummel, and he's a lesser known composer. I mean, there's a Hummel composer who writes for trumpet mainly, but
Mhm.
this is a lesser known one, and I found him and I was like, I got to put this on my recital. It sounds really really cool. Um, so there's that. There's also a really pretty piece by Carl Reinecke called Nocturno, and it's gorgeous, gorgeous melody.
Hmm.
So
Are
those are the top
these
three.
Wow, that was a really good list. You'll definitely have to remind me and text me all of the names because I definitely don't know a lot of the music outside of the main ones or the piano ones. So it's
Definitely.
very nice for me to get these suggestions from you and everyone on Classical Chats. Do you have a favorite piece?
Tchaikovsky Symphony Number 6. That one
Ah,
is my favorite in terms of horns. It's a lot of fun to play.
but it's such a dark piece. I
It
mean,
is,
the story behind that piece, and
definitely.
it's not something that I would be like, let me listen to it
Oh
and
yeah, yeah. It's
make
fun to
myself
perform it.
happy.
It's one of the ones where performers are happy. Maybe not the audience as much, but the performers get a lot out of it. Um,
Have you played it in orchestra
I have
with
not
that?
played that one. I've played Rosencavalier before, the whole
Oh, wow.
suite. Yeah, it's a blow. It's definitely a blow, but it's enjoyable. Like I got chills every time it got to like the middle section of it, and it's really quiet, and then it all of a sudden it turns into Venetian waltz. It's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's wonderful hearing how excited you get talking about horn music and pieces that you're uh, loving with the horn sections. So
Definitely.
that's great. Mm, Anything you'd like to share with the audience
Um,
about horns, about your journey?
yeah, sure.
Because
Well, I
you're my first horn player on Classical Chats.
My pleasure. Well, there's two different types of wraps of horns. So there's what's called Geyer wrap horns, which are a little bit lighter with their wrap, and then there's cresp wrap horns, which is like this standard Con 8D here. Um,
Wait, what's a rap horn?
like the wrap is like the how all the corks and everything, like all the stuff in between, like
Ah,
that's the wrap. So like some of like this one is more of like an open, like bigger, heavier wrap, and then the other horn that I have is like a tighter wrap, basically. That's the
I didn't know
difference.
that you would own two horns.
Yeah. Well, the main reason is it's good to have a backup in case something happens to your primary horn. Because if you get like a dent or a ding in the wrong place, it can totally alter the sound of your horn, or very subtly. But you notice like maybe there's a rattling sound or something.
Mm,
So that's something you have to pay attention to. And also, maintenance on horns is something you definitely have to pay attention to. Um, like you definitely have to get like valve oil. Like I recommend Hetman's, which is a really good valve oil, and slide grease so that your slides don't get all weird and gross and they're not able to move. So it's a lot that goes into it, and you have to give your horn a bath like every month or so. It's a lot of
Wait, what does that
maintenance.
mean?
Oh,
What does
so
that mean, giving a horn a bath?
so you literally take out all the slides and you get like lukewarm water. You like go into the bath, you get it like actually go to a bath, and like you put it in there and you use what's called a snake, and you run it through the lead pipe and it goes out of one of the tuning slides, and that's how you get some of the stuff out of the horn.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's how
Wait,
you
I
clean it.
didn't know that you could submerge a horn in water.
Yes, if you take out all those slides, like there should be no problem.
Wow. I feel so stupid not knowing this, but I because you would never have water on a
Oh
piano.
no, no, no.
So for some reason, I just thought you would never have your instrument contact with water, otherwise it would just go rusty. So
Yeah,
this is very interesting. I had no idea that you would do that.
definitely.
Does the moisture affect the timbre of the sound? In what way? Because I
Um,
know for piano, if it gets really humid, like for example now it's getting warmer and warmer and there's a lot more moisture in the air, so it gets a little bit slower in action and the sound is a bit more muffled. But
Interesting.
for horn, what is that like?
It's totally different. In terms of moisture, the only kind of moisture that really bothers us is spit. So we have like spit valves. You'll see horn players sometimes if they have like rest in an
They
orchestra,
like
they'll be like
blow
turning
into
around.
it, right? Or
Yeah,
to
like
like get something out?
yeah, like sometimes we have what's called spit valves, which lets us like blow into the mouthpiece, and it's like a quick way to get rid of spit. But then you'll see other players like turning around their horns and trying to empty it out of, and pulling out slides and stuff. Um, so
That's
that's
funny.
one of the things.
That reminded me, a few days ago, I saw the documentary of Leonard Bernstein.
Oh,
I
awesome.
don't know if you saw, it was on YouTube of him conducting West Side Story, and in the
Yes.
middle of the recording session or in the rehearsals, one of the horn players used it to scratch his back, which I
Yep.
thought was
Yep. I've seen that video. It's very iconic.
funny.
Um, but when you were talking about affecting the timbre of the instrument, usually what happens is when it's cold outside, we get really flat, and then when it's sharp, we get really like sharp. When it's
Hmm.
hot, so it's a weather effect for
Why?
playing a little bit.
Why is that? This is a very dumb question. I know for pianos, the strings expand and contract,
That's pretty
uh,
much the same. What
based
happens
on
with
the
the
coldness
horn?
and. But what contracts and what expands for
So
your horn instrument?
basically all the slides like when it gets hot they all like kind of expand a little bit. It's like very subtle. So it feels
Yeah.
easier to play actually during the summer than it is during the winter, because during the winter, I mean, you have several factors going against you. You got colder weather, maybe the air is a little bit thinner, and also the horn is tighter, so it's easier for your mouthpiece to get stuck. There's a lot of things that make it harder to play in the winter for sure, um,
Mm.
but it tends to get flattered if you leave it in a cold place. So you have to actually physically warm it up by playing like long tones and a couple of flexibility exercises.
Ah, that's very interesting.
Yeah,
Wow, I'm learning so much about the horns. Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
I'm just seeing it in the background,
Yep,
and I'm wondering, do you need to do temperature control, humidity
not
control, or
really.
is it
We're able
able
to
to
adjust.
expand?
Um, that's a good question. I don't
Because,
think.
like, for example, for a piano, if it gets too dry, the soundboard could crack
Right.
in the
Well,
most extreme case.
I don't think I've seen a horn crack due to temperature because it's pretty durable in that sense.
Well,
It's
I
not
mean, if
like a
you can
woodwind.
swim in the bath, then I guess
Yeah.
it's a lot.
You can't put a woodwind instrument in a bath because it would definitely crack. Like woodwinds have to worry about like cracks in their instruments, like especially oboe players or clarinet players. If it gets too cold, their instrument could literally split in half. So
Hmm.
they have to deal with keeping their instrument in a good temperate place. Preferably like room temperature would be the most ideal situation for them. But as horn players, you don't really have to worry about that all too much. Because we're able to get a sufficient amount of air moving in the horn, and that typically warms it up, even if it's cold.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah,
So it can withstand the changes
yeah,
even when it gets flat or too sharp. It
right. And
just.
and usually when, like, for example, I've seen the Chicago Civic Orchestra or Chicago Symphony Orchestra, even when they play outside and it's really cold, like they're all flat together, so they play in tune with each other.
Ah, so they don't even try to adjust the pitch when it's flat.
No, not really. If it's convenient, they all just play flat together.
Huh, that is
Yeah,
very interesting.
yeah.
Well, I guess it's not the case if they were playing with other strings, right?
Definitely. If they were in an orchestra, they'd usually be inside. Um,
Yeah.
but
Well, nowadays though, outdoor concerts
yeah,
are becoming a thing. Have you played in any outdoor
I
concerts?
have not yet. Well, I mean, I've played like some duets with a couple of friends, like my brass quintet. We've gone out and played some outdoor gigs every once in a while. Um,
Brass quintet.
yes.
I didn't know you have that.
Oh, we got plenty of things. Horns also tend to play in woodwind octets, so we pretty much act as the tuba. It's like usually two flutes, an oboe, a bassoon, and a horn. So it
Mm.
can turn out really cool. It's an interesting sound. And then there's brass quintets, which consist of a tuba, a horn player, two trumpet players, and one trombone player.
That's cool. I mean, I knew that they existed in the general Platonic sense, but I didn't know that you were doing chamber music as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been doing a lot of chamber music these days, and our brass quintet we actually like tour around Atlanta actually, and kind of around
Ah.
Georgia. So we call ourselves the Perimeter Brass because we're kind of all around Atlanta. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So it's kind of a fun thing for you to do, but you would still like to be an orchestra player.
Definitely. That's my goal.
How come?
Well, I mean, I've always loved playing in orchestra settings, and I mean, I do love teaching private lessons as well. Um, but I think the thing that really gets me going is playing with a full string section. That's the
Mm,
thing I miss the most these days because we do have orchestra, but it's in like a different capacity. So in our school we have like this two different string orchestras are going on. It's like a red and a blue orchestra. So they divided up the string players evenly like that. But what our conductor decided to do for this semester was he had us basically the brass were all in their own sectionals. So it was only brass playing a bunch of standards, and then all the woodwinds would be playing on a different day, doing all the standards for them as well. So it was a good chance
mm,
for us to get exposed to a lot of repertoire in a semester that we wouldn't get to usually touch.
that's nice. But yeah, I can also imagine how much more overwhelming in a good sense when you're part of an orchestra and to
Definitely.
have the, I mean, even when I play with an orchestra, which has been such a long time ago, I don't even remember when I last played an orchestra, but to be a part of the envelope of the just immense colors, it's always so special. So
Right.
I can imagine why you would want to be in an orchestra.
Definitely. I've also enjoyed playing with brass as well. I mean, when we have the sectionals, it's kind of weird because the strings are missing, and there's a lot of parts maybe in brass that are just like accompaniment to the strings, and sometimes
Mm.
it sounds like so much is missing when the strings aren't there. Sometimes when the violins are doing like something really long and like high and stuff, it's just like
Kind of
I
like
miss it.
tearing at your heartstrings.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm. Yeah, that is one thing that, I mean, one of the many things that pianos cannot do is have that overwhelming pulling at your just
Right.
everything kind of
Well,
effect.
they do have definitely have a beautiful sound. I mean, there's like there's like a Celeste, especially is played a lot in orchestras as well, and they have
Mm.
some really gorgeous like parts, especially in
Oh, yeah,
Rosencavalier as
but
well.
it's always really gorgeous when it's melt with the orchestra somehow,
Right,
or like creating a contrasting effect.
definitely. It can
I think of Scriabin had those, right?
definitely,
Probably.
definitely, and I mean also in Harry Potter as well.
Mm,
Use that as an extended instrumentation choice.
yes.
Definitely.
Back to references of movies. It's like we're going in a circle from
It's
where we began.
all a full
It's kind of
circle.
perfect.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I've
I
thought
mean,
about being in LA as a studio musician, but it requires really, really good rhythm. That's my primary concern is rhythm, especially when
mm,
it's coming to those jobs. Because I heard it's literally a call basis. Like if you miss a call, like you don't get the gig, basically. And it's a very much connection scene apparently in LA. Because my professor, she freelanced there for about 2 years, and she was the semi-finalist for New York Phil in 2016. But like when she was telling me about like playing in LA, it's a stressful environment for musicians, especially because you have to know people and you have to work with the people like consistently, and you have to be very consistent about your playing. Otherwise, you're not going to get the job.
mm.
Pretty much.
Yeah, a lot of the music industry I've been learning is a lot to do with networking and connections.
Definitely. And also the teachers you study with can definitely have a big influence on your job as well. Like, oh, I see on your CV or your resume that you studied with this person, and they have a better idea of where your sound is coming from, essentially.
Huh.
Because
So the
there's
tradition really matters.
yes, definitely. But also
Oh.
another thing is every horn player's sound is different. Like everybody should have a sound in their head. Like maybe they are listening to a famous horn player like Stefan Dorr or Sarah Willis or Andrew Bain, countless other horn players. But they typically somebody has to have a certain sound. Like I want to sound like this, and how do I get to this sound? is a big thing that a lot of people have to wake up and realize. So chasing your particular sound is a hard thing to do, especially when you're dealing with any kind of tension issues or there's something physically not happening and you want to sound a particular way and you see somebody doing it, and we learn a lot by replication. So it's a harder thing to do when you're not understanding what they're doing to create the sound that they're making.
Mm. Well, it sounds like you're in a great track into finding your sound and finding your job in orchestras. So good
Definitely.
luck.
Thank you.
How many years left do you have in school before you jump out for the
um
real world?
Probably about 2 or 3 just to play it safe.
Ah, okay. Well,
So
good luck. I mean, it sounds like very exciting. You have so much passion, I can tell just from the way you talk about the horn. So I'm
definitely.
excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I learned a lot from Tyler. I hope you learned a lot about the horn and about the many interesting things about the horn, like the bath. I had no idea about this. I feel very stupid. But anyway, I hope you learned something and had fun listening to this episode. Be sure to check out our other episodes of Classical Chats on YouTube and or on your favorite streaming platform for a podcast. If you want to know more about Together with Classical's endeavors and current fundraising and what we're doing to give back to the community of classical music, please check out our website, www.togetherwithclassical.org. Thank you very much. In the meantime, I gotta go practice. So, thank you for listening. Bye.